Thank you, Chairman Woods. As I said before, equality is the wave of the future, not just in Arab Spring, but in America and the world. The world is getting more peaceful and more equal. Unfortunately, violence is the great eraser of great things, and that includes equality. Now, we have several different presentations of youth violence prevention. I'm going to do ours first. Ours by Win the War Against Violence, and it's called Immoral Kid. And I'm going to take a bite. This is our opinion on how to reduce violence, especially youth violence. It's sponsored by Central Bank, and it's called Immoral Kid Presentation. This presentation of ours, these are our opinions and our opinions alone. Our mission is to help bring about a substantial reduction in violence through education. And we're only going to talk about three things in our program, our Moral Kid program. Principles, personal individual identity, and then how to do it. This is our logo. And what this means is our double-sided coin of deterrence, we call it. This, to us, represents violence deterrence. Peace through strength, and strength through peace. If you don't push peace as hard as you push violence, you won't know who to fight, why to fight, when to fight, or if you should fight at all. And if you push peace hard enough, there won't be a need to fight. So it's not just peace through strength, you have to push strength through peace and peace through strength equally. You could skip this one. Why do we talk to youth? It's quite simple. It's number 2 killer of all youths, violence. If these are age 10 to 19, if you look over the last 5 years period here, homicides is number 2 for all youths 10 to 19, above suicide, above cancer, above heart disease. Now, 32%, these are numbers everybody knows, 32% of high school students report being in a fight, 20% is being bullied, teens of violence are also involved with other type of criminal behavior. It's a problem with youth. And when you talk about youth of color, it is the number 1 killer of youth violence. If you include all youth, 10 to 19, it's number 2. If you include just those of color, it's the number 1 cause of youth. Now, that was 10 to 19. When you go 10 to 24, you had just 5 years of age, the numbers jump 20%. The ages of 19 to 24 is the danger zone for violence, for both doing violence or being a victim of violence. It's 20% higher than any demographic. That is why our organization, we are looking to reach the 350,000 youths in Kentucky that are 12 to 17 before they get to this 19-24 age. And subsequently, there's 26 million youths in America, 12 to 17, that we hope to reach with our peaceful message. Again, before they get to the 19 and 24. And according to the CDC, you are a youth until you're 24 for the simple reason that is when your brain is fully developed. I say youth, I mean all of us. When our brains were fully developed, we were to age 24. Now, that's what we say, it's been too unfair, too long, to black youth, to minority youth, to have it be the number 1 killer. For them, it's number 2 killer when you have all youth. As Chairman Wood said so eloquently, we have to do something about this achievement gap. We're here to help the Equity Council and all black youth by trying to close the bereavement gap first. We want them to be, we believe we have to close the peace gap in society for black youth and minorities before we can close the achievement gap. I know when we do our program, we talk to some kids and it's just terrible, traumatic circumstances, and we're wondering how they show up for school, not to mention learn anything. So our programs and everything we do is we give extra attention to black youth. not special attention. Everybody gets the same information, but we give extra attention to black people because, again, it's been too unfair for too long. Of course, we're trying to reduce the violence for all youth as well. You know, I think one of the reasons why there is so much youth violence is they don't know what it is. We give the kids these official definitions. Webster, World Health Organization, Centers for Disease Control, FBI. Violent crime is composed of 4 offenses: murder, non-negligent manslaughter, forcible rape, robbery, and aggravated assault. These are the official definitions. But what we would like to do is give youth our definition. Of course, it's hitting. That's of course. Unwanted touching is violence. Shooting, stabbing, of course. Murder, homicide is absolutely the worst type of violence that you can do. It's also maiming. A lot of kids don't know what that is. When you cut off a person's finger, arm, or a piece of their body, that's maiming. That is also violence. But it's other things. It's robbery. When you threaten someone's life, that's violence too. All threats of violence. Not threats, but threats of violence. Stalking. Stalking is a huge problem right here in Kentucky. Harassment, just bothering somebody when they don't want to be bothered. That is also violence. The fear of violence is a form of violence. It has the same effect on the human body as actual violence, in some cases worse. So one of the things we try to teach kids and youth is that the fear of violence is a form of violence. But that's not all violence is. It's also constraint or incapacitation, drugging somebody. It's, of course, kidnapping, taking someone against their will. False imprisonment. You could be sure these youth didn't want to be there. Suicide, self-harm. If you look at somebody's body and you see scratches or cuts or what, that is violence done to your body. It's done by yourself, but we consider that violence too. Now, just don't take our word for it. You know, you say, some will argue with us that, no, those things aren't violence. It is violence, and even the FBI thinks so. We just grabbed these from a man arrested for stalking, pleads guilty to sexual contact, assault with a dangerous weapon, threat to commit violence, alleged kidnappers arrested, sentenced for anti-gay hate crimes. These are federal crimes. So it's not just what we think, it's what society thinks. The problem is there's so much youth violence is they don't know everything it encompasses. Now we have something else, an additional definition of violence. We call it shadow violence, and this has become popular where we had to take it out and use it elsewhere. This has the same effect on the youth as violence, but society doesn't call it violence. Accidents. Again, if you count all youth, accidents is the number one killer of all youth. Unintentional poverty. All the Peace Nobel laureates said poverty is the worst form of violence because of the stunting and the things it does to your body. Of course, poisoning and accidental overdoses, 1,000 deaths in Kentucky alone. Smoking. If you've ever seen someone die from smoking, it's one of the worst ways to go. Pollution, the things in the atmosphere. Again, we want to protect the whole youth and nothing but the youth. If I laid somebody down there from a car accident or from violence, unless I told you the difference, you wouldn't know. We want to protect the whole youth. This is our higher definition of violence, which we try to teach kids. And one of the organizations we're members of is called K-SPAN, and injuries kill more Kentuckians every year than ages 1 through 44 than heart disease, cancer, stroke, HIV combined. We have the 6th highest rate of unintentional injury in the United States. Shadow violence, we believe, is also violence. But, you know, sometimes it's a little too much for youth to wrap their heads around. All these definitions. So we like to give it to them really straight. Here's a simple definition of violence. Violence is very bad pain. And everybody knows very bad pain is not good. Kids get it. These are a school shooting, workplace shooting. On the bottom here is an amoeba, a single cell living organism. If you put an amoeba in a petri dish and you drop a piece of acid in, the amoeba moves away. We have 15 trillion single cells in our body. We should be 15 trillion times smarter than that amoeba by simply moving away from very bad pain. One of the things we get from kids is, oh, I don't care. Just an answer we just seem to get quite a bit. So we say, all right, you don't care about violence. Do you care about food? Well, of course we care about food. Well, you know, when areas there's violence, I mean, businesses can't run, food can't get delivered. You can be sure that areas of violence, of water shortages. Last year was the greatest year for refugees having to leave their homes in the world because of violence. Of course, like I said, it'll cause you bad pain, and worse, violence might injure your friends or family. And this doesn't have to be your genetic family. And if you've ever had a family member hurt through violence, it's worse than getting hurt yourself. But again, the number one reason you should care about violence is you might die. We already said, if you're black youth, it's number one cause of death. All youth, number two. So it's a very realistic possibility. And when you die, no more good things. No more friends, video games, TV, movies, parties, birthdays, holidays, food, and worst of all, no more hanging out with your friends. So when you die, all these good things are gone. So when you are being peaceful and avoiding violence, you're acting in your own self-interest without being selfish. And that is a rare and beautiful combination. Now, a lot of kids say, well, what about the next world? You know, I'm sure there's good things in the next world too, afterlife. But you deserve both. Why shortchange yourself? You deserve the good things in this life and good things in the afterlife. We like to give kids a big picture. Why are we fighting violence? We believe, our organization, Win the War Against Violence, we believe that it is the biggest roadblock to human success, violence. It is hurting our survival, and it is hurting human advancement. That's all of us. We believe with a much more peaceful world, we will have a slingshot of our chances of survival and advancement. So that's why we believe it's a front burner issue. We like to show all the money that we spend, our treasures that we build on violence. I mean, we're 4% of GDP. I mean, we're spending $9 trillion a year as the world on defense and military. Money from our hard-earned that we could be using towards different things. If our rate was just the same as Canada, we would save, I lost it here right now, but I think, anyway, 104 billion, I believe it is. So the amount of money we spend on violence is astronomical. Also, diseases. All these diseases cannot be cured. If you get these, you might just probably die from them. They can be treated, but they're not cured. Again, the time and energy we spend on violence with victims, self-defense, everything, we could, if we shifted in other directions, we could cure these in years, not decades or centuries. Also, for whatever reason, we have more natural disasters going on in this world right now. I think in 2011 it was 380 billion, highest on record. We are unprepared for natural disasters. Many people are losing their lives in things that we can prevent and work towards. And we have to be really prepared in case there's a really big natural event. When we give this presentation, it was the day a meteor hit Russia about a year ago. So up to 1 million near-Earth objects are a serious threat. We haven't begun to look at them yet. We need to put our resources towards protecting ourselves from nature too. Increase our survival chances and accelerate advancement. That is why the world needs to dramatically reduce violence. Okay, so who's the one messing us up? Who's the one screwing everything up that we can't cure diseases and we can't prepare? Is it terrorists, gangs, military, police, kids? As I said before, youth are responsible for half the violence, ages 12 to 24, within that one 10-year, 12-year period. It's unbelievable. You had to have that the next 40 years, 24 to 64, to equal that. So obviously, if we're going to want to reduce violence, we're going to have to deal with youth. But the bottom line is all are capable. But moving the dial, we can get probably the most traction dealing with youth. But we have narrowed it down even further. It's only humans doing the violence. We don't have to fight lions and tigers and bears anymore. And we believe it's not all humans. It's just we just concentrate on the evil piece, people that promote, protect, and produce the violence. Now, of course, we want to concentrate on the people who produce the violence. And when the War Against Violence has calculated that only 7% of males are violent. Turn that around. 93% of males are peaceful. It's just a few. And by the way, 1.34% of females. Only 7% of males. And again, we like to use our local area of Ray Larson, our Fayette County attorney. Study after study has shown that police, prosecutors have known for a long time it's only a small percentage of criminals commit the vast majority of crime. Director of Community Corrections here in Lexington, Ray Sabertine. After 40 years in correction, I realized the 90-10 rule of people in custody. 90% of inmates are compliant, with 10% are problematic. They say 10%, I say 7. That's it. We call them the unlucky 7. It just reminds me when I was in middle school, the principal gave me the whole problem in the world in a nutshell. I didn't believe him. He said, a few ruin it for everybody. That's the problem with the world. It's just a teeny tiny few ruining everything for everybody, even our survival chances. Why do they do it? Here's all the official definitions. An increased risk, complex interaction, all these things, warning signs, and should be carefully evaluated. They don't know. All these different risk factors from the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, the premier group, it's too complex. We'll never know why people do violence. And worse, we'll never know who the next person will be to do violence. Ever. That's problematic thinking that you do know somebody who's going to. There's no single cause. We'll never know why people do violence. They could be any place and they could be anywhere in the world. That's why we have to talk to all youth and have to talk to all people, because we will never know. Just a couple more slides and I'm going to introduce our next speaker. Why do they do it? They have lots of reasons. Next, please. We believe people do it because it's our guess. It's primal instinct. Because it exists in millions of other species too, violence. It's not just a characteristic of humans. There's even violence out in space, people. 2 galaxies colliding. That's pretty severe. Stress, your brain shrinks under stress. No wonder people try to find a way out. We believe the #1 reason people do violence, our guess, is to feel good, better, or best. That they're unhappy for some reason, and violence is their bad choice to try to change that. So when you cut through all the rhetoric, why people say they do violence, you'll get to the core, which is people just wanting to feel good, better, or best. You can skip this too. Who are the victims? Kids are the biggest victims of violence. 2/3 of all victims, violent victims, are kids. Hard to believe. Mothers, sisters, daughters, your people you love, your partners, sexual orientation people, these have been killed because of their sexual orientation. Journalists are not immune, especially if you're in Mexico. Presidents are not immune. This was killed. Pope's been shot. Even people like I look up to, starting linebacker for the Kansas City Chiefs, Mr. Belcher, 1 year ago, killed himself, his wife, and his child in the Kansas City Chief parking lot. last slide. You could be the next victim of violence. No one has immunity. Do not be in denial. This is not a joke. It's not a game. Bad paid is as real as it gets.